King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts. And you may ask yourself, why do I continue to personally punish myself and hit over the head my grievances with radio? Why do I keep doing this to myself? Why do I keep coming onto this program and consistently complain about corporate radio? Because of the fact that I was part of it for quite a number of years. And I tried really hard to get in the door to these radio stations for a decade before that. It felt, well, at least, about 6-7 years before that. Because even when I was up in my teens, I was trying to apply. And through college, I was trying to apply. And then I went ahead and got here, and I started working where I was, and I tried to go where I could to get myself noticed and to get myself in the door to radio, which is something I loved. Now, I'm sure some of you in the broadcast industry or the media industry know some people like myself that are radiophiles. I can talk about the graces of the people that I listened to growing up: Casey Kasem, Neil Rogers, Howard Stern, Rush Limbaugh. I'd have to put into that mix as well. I have to go in and include Rick and Suds. I'd have to include, I didn't listen to Ron and Ron. I did listen to Tom Likas and Don and Mike and the local jocks that I had here when it comes to Power 96 and Cox on the Radio or Y100 with Sonny Fox or Kenny Walker or Footy. I could talk about Randy Rhodes, who was on WID in the day, Phil Hendry coming on here back in the day. There's so many different people that inspired me to get into this business. And on the outside, looking into this big monstrous space that was radio, the movie Pump Up the Volume, starring Christian Slater and Samantha Mathis, that movie ultimately made me want to go into radio. Like, I already knew I wanted to get into broadcasting in one shape, way, or form, but Pump Up the Volume was always ultimately the movie that made me want to get into radio. It was wonderful. And it was the rebellion. It was that fearless atmosphere, which I learned what radio was. Because what Happy Hard Harry, the Christian Slater character in that movie, was basically what freeform radio was of FM radio back in the 60s and 70s. And when you think of all the great music and all the great disc jockeys that came before us and the entertainment value they gave and the music they got to go ahead and play, like, that playground was fun and wonderful, and all you needed was a great voice. And a voice that resonated, that people liked, that people wanted to hear, that people were informed, educated, and entertained by every day, every minute of every hour when you were on the air. And that was something I always enjoyed. No matter if I was working at some underground station or some other setup and I was saying, okay, I'm not getting paid nothing for this. It didn't matter to me, because no matter what, I enjoyed being in this business. I wanted to be a part of it, outside looking in, and I did get in. But I also followed along and saw what the business was going to be. So I got to be in the business of radio. Now, I didn't get to go behind the microphone a whole lot and do a lot of things, but I did get some voiceover work. I did get to work and, do some on-air talking on the air as a producer end. Not hosting my own show, but that's okay. But I got some of that. I've gotten to work in music radio where I gotten to do voiceover work and voice tracking and introducing songs and music and all of that. I've gotten all that because, remember, I actually had that happen in the early 2000s, and then I had the recent run in 2018 and 2019, where I actually had the chance to go ahead and work in radio again. Thanks to my friend James Leger, who ran a couple of radio stations, AM to FM translators. And it was so much fun. And it was programming. And it was me getting a chance to do what I already knew and learning and enhancing my craft and seeing that what I was doing would be effective and would work. I knew how to program a station, even if it wasn't a format that I was familiar with. I was able to learn that format, get it right, and get the music right. And there was only so much time before that I had to try to turn things around, which I did. The thing is, I never got the time to go and turn it all around because I only had really 6 months to get it done. We weren't worrying about ratings, we were worrying about revenue. But the revenue started to come in. And it wasn't enough time for me to go ahead and turn it around completely. But I got in a great spot. What I did was, in essence, I was able to get that station, 104.9 or WIRA, up in Fort Pierce, Florida. I was able to get that station at a point where somebody else wanted to buy it. And now they're leasing it at the moment. And they've been leasing it for the last couple of years. And it's run successfully. But it got off the ground because the station was viable. Like, nobody would have bought that the way it was when I first got into it because it wasn't running well. Because the station, you only had a couple of people that did anything at all to help kind of build that station up and get it to a certain way. So I came in with my programming savvy, and I got the station back up to a level where it needed to be. And I knew exactly what to do. And even for a station that I had not gotten a dime in the whole year of 2019 working on it, basically adding an extra, say, 15, 20 hours a week just to work on that as the program. I was the de facto program director for about 8 months of that run. And I came in, actually it was longer than that, it was almost a year. I did it about 9 months, close to a year, and as a de facto program director for that station, to get that off the ground and to get it to a point where it sounded really good, and to understand the same BS that comes up with people that want to come in and start wanting to change the programming of the station for sales purposes, to go after an older audience, the corporate mentality. I got to have that face to face with several people that were brought in from a sales perspective and a thought process that was antiquated. But I knew what I was doing. We had an audience that was resonating, and people were buying advertising. So we were doing something right. And the music was getting there, was exactly where it needed to be. We were doing the right thing with that format. And it was wonderful. So I'm proud of what I did there. And that was me getting a chance as a local programmer to turn things around for a station to get the music out there that it needed to be. On that station, a reggaeton-based, it was a Spanish-based station, but we had to understand that Spanish music cannot be just tropical. You just can't play salsa merengue that is from the 70s, 80s, and 90s and expect that station to resonate with a whole audience. We need to reach a younger audience as well, which was the plan. So for me, I played reggaeton, and I played bachata, and I played some of the other things out there, and I tried to play a little bit of the urban side at night. I was trying to program that station for all audiences, one station for every generation, and I did that, and it was resonating, and we were trying on all different cylinders to get that format to work in an area that never had it. But the Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce area is a very diverse market. And one of the things I wanted to do and make sure I was very diverse was I wanted to diversify the sound. A traditional Spanish, tropical, or reggaeton station, diversity of voices, the singers. So for me, I wanted to make sure I reached out, and there were a lot of female artists that were not normally played on other stations, that I went out and played myself. Whether it was Teeny, or Rosalia, or Carol G, or Sophia Reyes. You got Nani Natasha, Becky G, Anita, Leslie Grace. Man, there were a lot of them. And I helped to expose that to the audience to try to get some more out for those artists. And not just that, I wanted to learn and diversify the audience of the music that we had, because I wanted to go ahead and take what I took from being in the Dominican Republic and listen to the stations there, and the excitement and the energy that those stations had. And the music they played was not just the reggaeton with a simple dembo, it was a different style, very tribal, very different, very exciting, and very diverse. because you have people of different shades, creeds, colors there in Dominican Republic. And it's just an interesting environment, a real feel of just change. And it's music that I think I was trying to catch on to early, because you have artists like El Alpha and DJ Sherry Scum. These are artists you wouldn't know, but if you listen to reggaeton or at all and you're pretty deep into it, you'll understand there are certain artists that are coming out of Dominican Republic that are very popular. And some of the reggaeton artists, the really hot ones, are collaborating with the El Alpha Jefes of the world, who is really trying to raise up the music in that area, which is the same thing we're trying to do with music overall, where pop music, which is the focus of my program tonight, for the most part, will be about how radio in just the mainstream, because in the Spanish music I was playing the mainstream, the songs that were new, the songs that were current, the songs that were streaming. I played those songs. I looked at the Billboard chart, the Apple Songs chart. I looked back at my nostalgia, and I found the songs that people wanted to listen to. And I researched and I tested, and I went ahead and did everything I could to put a very long 1,000-song playlist together, get the right songs out there in rotation, new songs in there, and better with some great classics. That's what I wanted to do. Now, radio, as I said, they have lost their way because they are not in touch with an audience, the next generation coming up after this. There's only so much you could do with trying to hold on to an audience of 35 to 64 years old, for the most part. Because you have stations that are targeted to 50 to 64-year-olds, an older community, a nostalgic music, playing the songs from the Great American Songbook. That's nice, but that's an older audience. And there's only so many sponsors you'll get for that. And then you have the audience that listens to kind of like the Soccer Mom style. So it's a bit of almost like a contemporary hit radio station, but it's not. They're playing quite a bit of songs that are also without the hard rock and rap. And so there are certain artists that will not get played that are in the popular lexicon. But that's what we need now. In order to create diversity, equity, and inclusion, the audience is determining who are the big stars coming out, regardless. And I don't care about the makeup of all these different artists that are out there and saying, okay, we need them to fit a particular narrative. They need to be Asian because it's Asian American Pacific Month. Or if it's LGBT next month because of Pride Month. It doesn't matter. It's how good are they? How well do they perform? How good are they? And that's what matters to me. And not to just create, have some artists that are diverse for the sake of diversity's sake because of this performative allyship that corporate does. And not just corporate media, but corporate brands, corporate companies will also placate to that diversity, equity, inclusion narrative as it fits them. And that's what they're doing. So one of the stories that comes up across today is a couple of things. Number one, earlier this year, I talked about how BTS had come out with a new album that really hit off hot, and they had a song called Dynamite that hit number one, and another song, Life Goes On, that also hit number one. Now, Life Goes On only had a little bit of a streaming life that went up and went down, but Dynamite actually got some radio push, and the streaming was incredible, and the sales were incredible. And that's what kept it up as high as it did on the Billboard chart as it did. Getting up there two non-consecutive weeks at number one. And that's what they were able to do. But the song got tossed out in favor of Olivia Rodrigo and Driver's License, which was the juggernaut at the start of the year. Which, you want to go ahead and talk about diversity? Listen, she's a Filipino-American. And regardless, she's a woman. She's a woman of color. You want to go and put all those together? It's regardless of that. Like, I appreciate her heritage. But she's a singer-songwriter, talented, and very good, and very pop-friendly, and reaches a younger audience, much like a Billie Eilish, or much like a Cardi B, for that matter. BTS also fits in a certain category. It's the boy band fixture. And K-pop, which I talked about a few months ago, where BTS, they have such a large following, a contingency of followers and fans, faithful stands to this product of whatever they do. And Dynamite came out, And some radio stations picked up on it, but radio didn't at that point. They preferred Ariana Grande had an album out. They said, no, we're going to stick with her. We're not going to go so much with BTS. No. Well, they're learning their lesson. It's only when they can control the narrative will they decide to crown or coronate an artist that needs to be somebody they're going to put into the radio pipeline and push them to the moon. So now BTS has a new song called Butter, and Variety.com reports how it's now all over Top 40 radio on every monitored station. So when I look right now, it's just... Now, they're saying it's already on there. I'm still looking for it, but I'm looking at the media-based charts, which is basically the charts that really determine what the corporate radio stations are doing, the ones that are reporting to media base. So in the story, first thing I said, quite interesting, Chris Willman here at Variety.com talks about, remember when BTS was a hard sell on American Top 40 radio stations, despite having an immense and very energized U.S. fan base? Neither do we. This week with Butter, the K-pop crew became the first international group to have a new song added at every Top 40 radio station reporting in a song's first week of release. The media-based numbers don't lie. Butter is listed as having 180 ads in the format this week. The number of stations that report their results for the charts, 180. So that's what they're saying. Now, at the moment, I don't see it added yet. So add means they just brought it on. So now I can tell you at this moment, on the current media-based chart for the week ending May 31st, the song is now immediately shot up to number 21 on their chart, which is a big move for them. And if that's the case, Ryan Seacrest will probably chart this song somewhere in the top 30 or the top 25 on the American Top 40 probably next week. That's what the plan would be. It's not as if they were too far off that mark this last time around when Dynamite debuted last year with 171 stations. It represents a remarkable turnaround as a top 40 format overcompensated for its initial reluctance to join the Army. According to Media Base, Butter achieved over 2,000 spins at the top 40 format during the week. The second most added new song was a Jonas Brothers collaborative effort with Marshmello, Leave Me Before You Love Me, which, just to say the point, Jonas Brothers, this song, I don't know when it came out, but it did not chart. It's not even on the chart yet. Maybe it'll be later, but it's a radio push. So it's not through streaming. It wasn't debuted through streaming. It wasn't debuted through sales. This was a single pushed directly only through radio because Jonas Brothers is a radio exclusive, basically. Jonas Brothers has put out a new hit. Radio already believes in them, and they're willing to say, okay, then we're just going to go and push them through here. If Post Malone puts out a song, then they're going to push it through radio initially. It'll go in the radio pipeline immediately. Billie Eilish immediately goes to the radio pipeline. And if you notice, with Billie Eilish right now, as it goes to the radio pipeline, the bit of that sellout factor comes to her. And this is nothing against her. Her music's still very good. When I look at the last couple of songs that have come out, after Everything You Wanted, we had Therefore I Am and Your Power. And those songs came up, they went up the Billboard, and they came back down because radio was a little bit behind on it. But they didn't have the kind of push. Like the streaming push wasn't as big, but with the Billboard methodology, the song still stayed up very high, nevertheless. But now, because of what's going on, the song Your Power by Billie Eilish dropped quite a bit. It's still big in radio, but that's what's holding it up as we speak. The song has dropped down from number 29 to number 54 this week, and it's only its third week. Or actually, yes, in its third week. And as a matter of fact, the song started at number 10, goes down to 29, goes down to 54. And this was with a radio push. Because on the radio, the song is in the top 20 as well. And has grown. And that's where we are now. So, the push through her company is going to definitely push out there and get the song up. But that doesn't make much for anything else. And there's a number of songs that do that, where they don't get much of a push in streaming, so they don't get that much up in the Billboard chart, and they're just kind of out there. So BTS gets here. Now, the song hasn't debuted yet on Billboard, but that's going to be, for most likely, the UK chart will debut it this week, up in their top 3 or top 2. And most likely Olivia Rodrigo's Good For You will debut it. Well, already hit number 1 last week. Probably will hit number 1 this week. Along with the rest of her album, it's going to probably be up there. Sour's going to be probably all over the place on that album, on that chart. Probably number 1 album as well, or close to it. But now back to BTS. This example here. Coming in third on the ad board was the artist many would consider the most talked about of the week, at least outside of Army basis. Olivia Rodrigo's Good For You, the third single just off her just-released album, made its top 40 chart bow with 86 ads. So it hit the chart. The song's already hit number 1 this week on Billboard. In the meantime, if you look at what the performance of Olivia Rodrigo is so far, they're still playing her previous hits, which are still popular and still should be up there because they're still being listed on Billboard. Like, it's still, the streaming numbers are still very good. But when you look so far, Good For You last week debuted at number 47. It's up to number 29. So it is getting a push. But only a couple of major radio stations that are willing to go and put the song out there did. But again, the adding to all different stations around the country, no, the radio push is not there yet. Now back to this again. 4th place would be Anita's Girl from Rio, which 19 stations picked up, but it's not on streaming. It's not in sales. It's nowhere on the chart. And so when I look at that, against the numbers that I have, it's a song that, it's a Spanish artist. And she's coming with an English song. That's great, but I'm not seeing much out of that. And there's always a number of artists that come up on the pop charts that are from media base that we've never heard of. And they're not even played in Europe. Because I'm listening to the European music over there, the European stations there, from Germany, from Greece, from the Netherlands, from UK. They're not playing it. So there's some songs in here that I don't know of. So you have a new song from Cheat Codes and Tinashe, Lean On Me, nowhere to be seen. Major Lazer Titans featuring Sia and Labyrinth, nowhere to be found. Sarah K's Remember That Night, it's not even on the chart. And that's Just Like You, Majid Jordan. These are like artists we don't know about, but they have a deal to go to the radio pipeline as opposed to going through streaming. And then AJ Mitchell, Stop. That's not an artist that gets played over here. Jackson Wang never gets played over here. He's a BTS doing solo work, if I'm correct. Sophia Carson, Fool's Gold. I don't know that song. Nessa Barrett. I've seen it in streaming. I've seen it a little bit on the... I've seen that song listed through TikTok in some cases, in the, if you know, the from the internet playlist on Spotify, but I don't know it from anywhere else. The Marshmello Jonas Brothers song, that's a new song. I haven't heard it on radio yet. Matter of fact, the BB Rexa Sacrifice. BB Rexa's had a couple of songs that have come and went. Like the last one she had was with Doja Cat in a collab, and that came and went off the chart like quickly. Like it was up there for a cup of coffee and gone. And that's with BB Rexa also getting quite a bit of push on TikTok to promote her song. But the song's not getting any traction. It's just what's happening. And I look at other songs they have, Regard, which is getting quite a bit of streaming, but not getting too much. It's definitely doing good in Europe, but not so much in the UK. And that song just got put up into the chart in the media base. The corporate radio is playing some of it here. That's just one of those songs they'll allow to be a dance song that's included. But there's so many good dance songs now that could definitely be brought over and could be played on contemporary hit radio. When they talk about there's not enough new songs to play and enough new songs to promote, well, one of the arguments is the fact that, well, are we able to get this artist to go ahead and perform for us? Can we get them to do any promotional stuff for us? Will the label do anything for us? And that's part of the thing that they have an issue with. So when they think of say regard, or they think of, like, there's some artists that I've listened to now that some good dance artists, but I guess they're not going to make the trip to the USA or get promoted. It's not going to happen. So, for instance, say, I think of a song from, there's a song now with Majestic Boniem, Rasputin, the 2021 remix, which is really big in Europe, but will never get played over here. There's a song from Leone called Faded Love, German artist. Would never get played here, but also big and huge over in Europe. And, you know, that's fine. Some markets are never going to get the songs that get played over here. That's okay. That's an understanding. But radio has different rules. It's who they can control, who they can manipulate, and who they can bring on and play. So like Kali Uchis, Telepatia, that song's going to be played on radio. I'm guessing because Interscope will put him out as an artist and will give them the promotional work that radio is going to ask for. So when radio gets to get what they want from the artist, then they'll play. So it's the incentivizing to radio, which is where certain artists will get pushed up before. At the moment, Olivia Rodrigo doesn't necessarily need so much of radio because her popularity is doing so well through streaming anyway and sales. So that's a different story. But eventually radio is going to have to realize, well, this artist, people really like Olivia Rodrigo. She has got a lot of songs right now that are going to be pushed out. If you look at the album Sour, you know, you already have 3 songs from the album that have already charted well. You have 2 songs that went to number 1. So it's important for radio to get on top of the Olivia Rodrigo chain 5 months later, 6 months later. They have her songs up here. Like her first song, Driver's License, is now at 17. Deja Vu is a little bit higher up at 14. And then you have the new song, Good For You, that's just getting on there now. And that's the kind of level that Ariana Grande commands because she can have 4 songs up there as well. She's got 34-35. They're now pushing POV to radio. And then you got Positions. Like, you know, there's all this to go with her. So they can go ahead and do that all they want. And then Dua Lipa, they also have to push because there's a lot of push from that company with what they're doing. So Levitating's a big song now, and so is We're Good. So they have to take care of her. And then all the songs they played for her out of her album featured Nostalgia. Because you can not get away from... Because after New Rules became the monster hit for her to hit number 1, then that's when... And the way they positioned Dua Lipa in America, that's when American radio said, okay, now we're going to go ahead and put her into the pipeline. She's coronated. We trust her to put out there, and we're always going to get her for whatever event we want. Music awards, you know, promotions, radio appearances, whatever. She's going to be made available for radio. And that's what they're going to do with her. And that's why they decide, okay, we're going to let you in to the mix. We're going to go ahead and start putting her on radio, and we're going to push her. Because it was at that point it happened. Then this album came out, and then boom, every song goes up there. Don't Start Now, Break My Heart, Levitating, didn't matter. They're just in like that. 4 songs from the album, pushed like crazy. But that's the way they operate. Oh, sorry. I need to go and continue going forward here and talk about the rest of this because I know I'm going a little too into the weeds with all this right now. So let me put it to you like this. This story from Variety.com really says everything. Few songs from American artists, let alone international acts, ever achieve out-of-the-box unanimity, as at least a few first-week holdouts can generally be counted upon for even the most obvious of smashes. Other hits that are considered ubiquitous that have been out for weeks, like Cardi B's Up, were still being added a handful of stations this week, well into the runs at radio. It's the fascinating story of this that really stands out to me. Now, the reason that this story is so important is because of the fact that what's happening now in radio when it comes to what's coming up now down the line with radio that radio is not paying attention to. This has to be considered greatly. TikTok radio. Now, we know we've had some TikTok playlists out there. Things like that have been out there for a little bit. We know TikTok has a good strangle on the music industry right now. It's definitely an influencer across the board. We're even seeing songs now from artists of the TikTok realm now making their way up there. So, Build a Porch, Build a Bitch. That song, it's now listed at the very bottom of the media-based charts at number 50. So there are some stations that are starting to play it right now. They're starting to add it to stations now as we speak. The song debuted at number 58 on the Billboard chart, by the way, as I mentioned this. So now, SiriusXM has gotten themselves involved. We now have the introduction of TikTok Radio. Let's go and talk about that real quick. That has been announced this week. Here's what it is. TikTok officially announced earlier this week that they're collaborating with SiriusXM Radio to create exclusive audio experiences, including SiriusXM Music, a SiriusXM Music channel, and Pandora playlists. So a new SiriusXM channel called TikTok Radio will be part of TikTok collaboration across SiriusXM and Pandora. And Pandora is launching a series of playlists hosted by top TikTok creators Bella Porch, Kristen Shelton, and Nick Tangora. Here it is. TikTok now not just being a disruptor in the music industry, they're now a player. When you least expected it, it happens. Be careful, radio, for what you don't do to stay involved and to realize when you're going to be passed over. TikTok is coming in right now to change the market for you, to make your style of radio airplay irrelevant. This is going to be considered. And for SiriusXM to take this step is huge. People need to go and pay attention. Fred Jacobs, one of the consultants who we've talked about here on the program, has pointed it out. We're going to talk about that in the story. So this summer, SiriusXM will launch TikTok Radio, a full-time music channel featuring the trending sounds that are defining pop culture from TikTok. It'll be presented by TikTok creators, tastemakers, and DJs. And it'll be available in vehicles and a streaming channel on the SiriusXM app, desktop, and all connected devices. The channel will feel like a radio version of the platform's For You page, featuring a diverse group of TikTok creators showcasing trending music and stories behind the songs throughout each day, and a weekly music countdown dedicated to the top trending tracks. And listeners can also hear directly from music's next generation of rising stars and whatever else the TikTok community is vibing to. This is going to take off. Keep in mind, Pandora launching a series of exclusive hosted playlists featuring creators who will take listeners through their favorite songs with special commentary about their sections. They'll be curating, hosting, and promoting the playlists to their fans on TikTok. The Tastemaker series will kick off with Bella Porch and other creators following in the coming months, and Pandora listeners can also tune into the TikTok Hits playlist, featuring all the latest and greatest songs featured and trending on TikTok. The first one TikTok's actually definitely put in collaborating in with, not with Spotify and not with Apple, but with Pandora and SiriusXM. And then TikTok will also offer fans access to select re-airings of Pandora's original series events, Pandora Live. So it's a back and forth here. This is big. And so this is all happening now, and TikTok has now partnered up, and now they're in the radio business. So Fred Jacobs, this is Radio Word I'm going to go through first. Fred Jacobs says radio managers need to pay attention to TikTok Radio. So he writes that TikTok Radio has the ability, quote, to impact every music station in the country, whether you play country, top 40, classic, rock, or hip-hop. Radio, are you listening yet? The corporate suits, they're going to lose their mark on the market right now. It's going to happen. This is the acceleration of radio being irrelevant and the corporate model dying on the vine because it's not working. We already read something. I just read something earlier today about Cumulus having to go and try to restructure their debt. Well, what about iHeartRadio? They're going to be the same problem as well. These stations cannot keep holding on to this kind of feel. This control here cannot stay forever. Now, Fred Jacobs mentions the launch is important because of its music discovery aspects, its emphasis on teen consumers, the fact that once again SiriusXM is embracing the word radio, even as so many broadcast companies seem to be running away from it. There you go. He's absolutely correct. There's more to be said in his article, in his blog. He says he's talked to Zane Lowe, the mastermind and main DJ behind Apple's first foray in the radio, Beats One, back in 2015. And Lowe described the branding process of the station with a sense of resignation to the New York Times, saying, quote, part of the last 3 months has been desperately trying to come up with a new word that's not radio. We couldn't do it. You still need radio. It's still important, no matter what. More from Fred Jacobs. TikTok since last year has not just emerged as a social media force to be reckoned with, but a platform that breaks new music by using it as the soundtracks for its highly habit-forming short videos. The record labels have taken note, especially when Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, a classic hit that is decades old, started charting again last year when it was used in a viral TikTok video. And other songs have done the same thing. The fact that Boney M and Rasputin recharted once again as a result. Matthew Wilder's Break My Stride also charted as well in the UK. Now, it didn't make it high enough to hit into the top 40 charts, but it did get into the hot one in their official charts top 100 list singles. So we already know Bella Porch is the first one. Cross promotion has already begun as Bella posted a TikTok video showcasing her debut playlist. The pain points for radio broadcasters are obvious. Number one, TikTok is showing its music discovery powers with its new radio station. Number two, it is also a personality play, shining a light on TikTok's most popular music stars. Because remember, the personality of these TikTok creators, they're going to be a part of this as well. So what are you going to do about that? They're not even professionals, but they're entertainers in the same right. And they could do the same work that the DJs you have now can do. Because radio and personality-driven radio is dead for the most part. So the hosts that you have now, what's interesting is there are a number of hosts on radio now, young, hungry, and on Top 40 Radio that are using TikTok to get their names known. I know it as well. There's a station on Nashville. There's one in Miami that's trying to go and do that. They're getting on, doing live streams with the TikTok crowd, doing some things to get themselves involved, doing TikTok videos to keep themselves relevant with the current music. It's very interesting. Number three, it clearly integrates the brands and functions of SiriusXM and Pandora. They're doing something to grit the younger audience, the next generation, into satellite radio. And it might actually work. And so if satellite radio wins this war and getting the younger generation over, then things go bad quickly for mainstream radio, for corporate terrestrial radio. Finally, it's a competitive middle finger raised at broadcasters by doubling down on the R word. By branding it TikTok Radio, SiriusXM is embracing the label that so many radio owners are sidestepping or using variants of audio and media to reposition their companies and assets. This is what Fred Jacobs also says. Whether TikTok Radio becomes a megawatt success for satellite radio or just another channel in its vast lineup is beside the point. What they're focusing on strategically and tactically should be a topic in every radio company's competitive strategies sessions. I've been talking about this since I started this program. And this is even before TikTok was in the picture. But TikTok has elevated the spotlight on all new music. They are the bidders. They have the audience. They have the engagement. Radio has none of that. They are not engaged, nor are they involved, nor are they attached to their listeners. The ones that I see are now are the ones that are reaching out through social media and, more importantly, TikTok. That's just the way it is. And the radio hosts don't have that big of an audience, but they're trying to build them because even they know if they could try to get certain songs up and try to draw some of that audience over to radio, they have a chance. Because even for them, they realize they might not get the local audience, but at least they can get the streaming audience that can listen to their song, their music streaming wherever, and they might go ahead and pick up that station, play it on their smart speaker, or listen to it on their phone. They might actually get a chance to get that audience over. So they're going to have to do that. But it doesn't help to the advertising revenue, which these radio stations fail to think about. You've got to get to the music that is actually being played. We just can't continue this way. Another story I want to take from Fred Jacobs that he also wrote about was marketing to millennials. Not just where you're trying to get the younger audience, but what about the audience that should be the one that should be listening anyway to radio after the ones that listen to classic rock or the ones that listen to the 90s album-oriented rock or hip-hop? Because, you know, you have stations that are classic hip-hop stations going after a crowd that's a little bit older, like a Generation X like myself. And Fred Jacobs talks about that. And this is where they talk about how the AM/FM radio, that car makers are trying to confront the reality that young people don't necessarily need them, as there are other ways to get around. And there was a story from Marketing Dive that he references talking about car brands embracing buzz mobile media to reach millennial cord cutters. So in the same kind of thought mindset that people will cut the cord for cable and network television to watch streaming, it's the same idea right now where people will stream audio or stream podcasts. As the automakers are finding out, according to the story from Robert Williams in Marketing Dive, he says that many in their 20s and 30s are cord cutters. Marketing them with conventional media, TV, print, and yes, radio is not likely to have great success. So more and more marketing, auto marketing, is designed to meet the audience where they are. The largest car buying segment, they've done their homework by researching the millennial marketplace and mindset, embracing social media, YouTube, and technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality. The pathways in which to reach Gen Y. In many ways, millennials snuck up on car companies and their marketing units. For too long, the conventional wisdom was that Gen Y had little interest in buying vehicles. And that was until they had families and moved to the suburbs. But the marketing axioms were so effective in reaching boomers and Gen Xers, but they did not apply to millennials. And Gen Z only represents 4% of the car buying public right now. But it won't be long before they become prospective customers. Now, in this story, which there's quite a bit to write that he wrote here, this is one of the things that I thought was very interesting. He took some information from some really amazing radio programmers and executives of the day, back in the 70s. Let me give you a couple names. One, Rick Sklar, who ran ABC Radio in the 1970s and, more importantly, 77 WABC in its heyday, bringing the best ratings in one of the biggest radio stations in the country, Top 40, on AM. Rick had been the programming guru behind the legendary WABC during his heyday. He believed in the fundamentals of great radio, but also was a consummate entertainer. Was also a superb storyteller, and his tales about the Beatles and other stars were riveting. Rick maintained when it came to research that truth could be found on the pages of Digits and Arbitron books. It was the yardstick of successful radio. If you played by the rules and excelled at the basics, you were likely rewarded with a good book. Rick was a big tent thinker, all about determining the best way to design and execute a mass appeal product. He didn't enjoy niche or flanking formats. It was about being number one. Who's doing that now on radio? These days, I feel like terrestrial radio is just trying to fill a void. So we have to have a hit station in a particular market, a country station in this market, a this in this market, and then the advertising can come around that. So the thought process is completely wrong. Mel Karmazin, big, major radio programmer, one of the guys that was first responsible for finding Howard Stern, for being one of the real trendsetters for radio, going from Metro Media to Infinity Broadcasting, and to also being top executive at CBS Radio and CBS itself. One of the things he said to Fred Jacobs when he was there working with Mel Karmazin was, quote, "You need research? I'll be your research. Go ahead. Ask me a question." Now, Mel was not a big fan of research, but you can imagine some of the exchanges he had consulting some of the biggest and best radio stations. Mel was into franchises. Howard Stern, the Dallas Cowboys, radio attractions that were big, bold, and cume urgent. So brought a big audience. So the idea is that radio needs to study the behavior of their target. There's no big mystery about whether they're spending their time or their money, but they could still take the easy way out with what has always worked for nearly a century. So the idea would be let the automakers do the heavy lifting, researching, branding, and marketing their cars and millennials. When those young drivers get behind the wheel, they'll discover AM/FM radio. They'll look at that thing and say, oh, let me turn this on and see what it is. But there's a big, ugly, fundamental flaw with that logic. Decades ago, when young drivers got behind the wheel, started the car, and looked at the dashboard, all they saw was the radio and a couple of knobs. But now you have the dashboards with the big screens, and there's so much more where radio is just lost in translation. And it's just going to get more and more convoluted and much more complicated going forward. And it's funny. He even quotes Bob Pittman. You know, I know what my feelings are about him. At the time, he actually talking about Bob Pittman talking about the youth opportunity. Quote, "The strongest appeal you can make is emotional. If you can get their emotions going, make them forget their logic, you've got them. At MTV, we don't shoot for the 14-year-olds. We own them." Well, what do you own now there, Bob? You don't own that audience now. Pretty clear. We see that. And these are the kind of things that I worry about. And I want radio to understand this, because radio should not be lost in the mix. It's the one medium that can be saved, that corporate can screw up on and unload all those stations to the public. And then there's a full rush for stations to be picked up and owned and operated, and somebody else can go and take over and maybe learn how to program a station and know how to reach that audience, a younger audience. Because the property is good. There's value in all these stations if you know what you're doing. I know I did it. There's a couple other stories I want to bring up here that I think are very important. And one of them I'm going to bring up real quick is on television. I think this is very important. The out of touch of network and cable TV. Primetime TV. The upfronts were happening most recently, and there's a whole talk about that. Let's go ahead and bring that up. So, the fall primetime lineup. I remember it was a time when I used to look for the TV Guide fall preview, and I clamored to get that. And I would sit through and read all through what new shows are coming out. So the new TV grid, and that's Aim High, with lots of Dick Wolf and revivals, NFL, no NBC sitcoms, and CW Saturdays. So here's what's happening now coming up. And the way this story starts is pretty funny. Wow. Dominic Patton at Deadline.com talks about it's going to feel a lot like 2005 on the Big Four this fall, as Saturday nights are all right for programming on the CW. So you might remember 2005, NCIS, CSI, and Law & Order Special Victims Unit all held dominant spots in the primetime lineups. CBS and NBC are hoping history repeats itself with the latest iterations of those franchises hitting the small screen this year, with some original cast members in tow. CW is looking to go and bring on Saturday nights now with originals for the first time. And there are some new shows this upcoming season. ABC has a girl band drama called Queens. CW has Legends of the Hidden Temple and Killer Camp. Fox has a new musical competition show called Alter Ego. NBC has a new show called La Brea, and CBS has a new show called Ghosts. Remarkably, the past home of The Office, Friends, and Seinfeld had 0 sitcoms on the schedule for the fall. They're not trusting. There's no comedies. So sitcoms are becoming something you have to go look for on Netflix or somewhere else, and not on network TV so much. Still bringing the big bucks and big crowds is the NFL, and the gridiron is on Fox for Thursdays now, Saturdays on NBC of college football, and Saturday Night Football on NBC. But then we also have a lot of Dick Wolf, who's known for the Law & Order franchise and so much more. He now has 3 separate nights of TV over 2 different networks. So here's what he has so far. CBS on Tuesdays, NBC on Wednesdays are literally nothing but Dick Wolf produced shows. CBS has now FBI. Now they have a new show called FBI International and FBI Most Wanted, which is also launched most recently. Spin-offs of spin-offs. NBC now has a new Law & Order for the Defense, along with Law & Order SVU and Law & Order Organized Crime. ABC is reviving The Wonder Years. And it's being produced by Empire co-creator Lee Daniels, Saladin K. Patterson, and original cast member Fred Savage, who helmed the pilot. And now the narration is done by Don Cheadle. For CBS, they're sticking with the Chuck Lorre comedies of Young Sheldon, Bob Loves Abishola, United States of Al, and Be Positive. And then for other things that are going on, NCIS will now have a Hawaii version and CSI Vegas. And William Peterson will be back for the CSI Vegas show. The CBS Entertainment boss, Kelly Call, told Deadline, quote, "In my mind, franchises hit the trifecta. They have terrific live viewing. They have significant delayed viewing. They also do very well in streaming. So you're just living on nostalgia." It's all they can do. Reruns and rehashing. It's all they can do. So it's not going to make anything better. It's basically holding on to the ratings before they completely go away. That's what they're looking to do. A couple of quick blips I want to talk about before we can wrap things up. I'm pretty much going to get through all I had here. A story from Rolling Stone talking about that Spotify's new discovery mode is just payola. In that story, they mentioned that, and for me, I get where they're coming from, but radio actually probably worked better when they were doing that before anyway. Just the thought. So we know about the new launch pay-for-play scheme, pressuring vulnerable artists and smaller labels to accept lower royalties in exchange for a boost in the company's algorithms. And they say that artists must unite in the story to condemn this thinly disguised royalty cut, which has already been released in beta mode, soon expected to enter the market in full force. And because when Spotify launches the program, according to Rolling Stone, it's likely to set in motion a race to the bottom, which many active artists feel compelled to pay up rather than risk being left in the battle of exposure, being left behind. The unhappy result, artists and the labels end up receiving lower royalties without gaining any meaningful additional exposure at all, because everyone is boosted, nobody is. Well, if that's the case, Apple might come up with this and Pandora might come with it. We never know. But this is why you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You just can't stick with radio. You can't just stick with streaming. If radio actually got their shit together, they would help sales, streaming, and all together. They would help so much. But radio's not doing that. And the only reason that Spotify can take this point is because radio's failing. That's why they're allowed to do this in the first place. Another story from Music Business Worldwide. Someone made a commentary talking about how the music business, or the record label business, as it was, is dead. Sofian Siddiqui says, quote, "In some ways, I think the label model as we know it is dead." He was a drummer and musical director, by the way, for some context. Worked with stars like Liam Payne, Ellie Goulding, and Rita Ora before forming his own rock band, the Black Mordia. And here's what he says in particular. because he runs a record label and management company, which also offers label services and publishing. He says the industry is changing every day, and in some ways, I think the label model as we know it is dead. And they're trying to strive to offer a wide range of services, a wider range, and many artists do not have the structure of a team, while others already have a vision, a team, and a company, and only need some support to be successful. And they're looking to be the modern music company that meets the needs of artists today. Thought some very interesting points here, but obviously he's talking about his company. That's why this is already being talked about here. It all comes together. Radio is forcing some unnecessary changes to the music promotion, changes to the streaming services. Radio, because of their ineptness, causes the artist to get hurt. It causes the listeners to be isolated. And all that's happening is, once again, another digital disruption, which will continue to hurt radio altogether. How smart is that to have? Keep that in mind. That's where they are. I'm going to leave it there. I got through everything I wanted to talk about tonight, and I appreciate all of you for listening to another Broadcasters Podcast, as you always do. Look for the show. Please pass the word along. Let everybody know about this program. If there are things you think I should talk about in the program, please, by all means, reach out to me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com, and check it out for yourself. And just let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you feel like you know someone that should be a guest on the program, by all means, reach out to me. kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com. Until next week, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.